5 o'clock on Monday, August 15th. The Goldsboro City Council meeting is called to order. We are in the work session at this point. So, Madam Clerk, if you will call the roll, please.
Mayor Ham.
Here.
Councilwoman Jones. Here. Councilman Broadway.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Polak.
Present.
Councilwoman Matthews. Present. Councilman Gallard.
Present. Okay, we're all here. Next item is the adoption of the agenda. Is there any changes or motions to be made to amend the agenda? If not, motions.
Sir,
Sorry,
sir.
excuse me.
If I may, the planning director requested about a 10-minute presentation from the Department of Public Safety, Office of Recovery and Resiliency. Maggie Bataglin will be giving you that presentation. And that is in reference to item H, Rebuild North Carolina Buyout Program. So you have some background information before that decision.
Okay, we'll put that under new business.
Yes, sir.
Okay, we'll add item C under new business. And we're going to call that the new core.
Sir?
What are you labeling that as?
NCORE presentation on Rebuild North Carolina Buyout
Okay.
Program. Item C, 5C.
Okay. All right, any other changes, proposed changes or amendments? If not, I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
So move.
Second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, raise your hand. Motion, the agenda is adopted as amended. At this time, on item number 3 is the District 6 swearing-in ceremony, and if you recall, in our August 1st meeting, the council elected Mr. Greg Batts to represent District 6. Mr. Batts is here tonight, along with his wife, any other family members and friends. So at this time, sir, I understand Judge Stackhouse is going to swear you in, so please come forward. And ma'am, you can accompany him or any of your friends that you want to accompany you. Good evening, Judge.
Good evening.
Welcome.
All right, any words you need to say?
You,
Or just you want to get this?
you can turn around
Yeah, you
and,
guys do.
if you could, stand
I'm
close,
gonna go on this side, okay?
a little bit close to the microphone here.
Excuse me. This is Matt, on this side. Left hand down. And before we begin, may I say 30 seconds of words about who I know as Coach Batts. My name is Curtis Stackhouse. I'm born and raised here in Goldsboro, North Carolina. Born on base in '81. And when I was 11, 12, 13 years old, I had a few men beyond my father in my life that taught me how to play basketball, how to play football. One of those was Mike Ellis, the late Mike Ellis, and the other was, and I know Coach Greg Batts. And when I was 10, 11, 12, I didn't understand exactly the sacrifice that men like him were making in my life. I mean, looking back, Coach Batts would work hard all day, okay, and then he would devote his time, his evenings, some evenings that maybe he spent better with his family, coaching young men, young girls and boys at the boys club, and I was one of those persons. And I didn't go out and I didn't become an NBA player, but looking back, those times, those sessions with Coach Batts, him giving his time and his effort and his passion up to me was a building block to me for the future. And so, I can't be where I am without those sort of things happening. So, Coach, love you, and I appreciate you. And I am honored 30 years later to be here to swear you in, watching you serve the community like you did 30 years ago and every year in between. So, because I'll let you go. May I ask you fast, I will go slow, don't worry. All right? Raise your right hand. I, Gregory Batts,
I, Gregory Batts,
do solemnly and sincerely swear
do solemnly and sincerely declare
that I will support
that I will support
the Constitution
the Constitution
and laws
and laws
of the United States,
of the United States.
that I will be faithful
I will be faithful
and bear true allegiance
and bear true allegiance
to the state of North Carolina
to the state of North Carolina,
and to the constitutional powers
which is the constitutional power
and authorities
and authority
which are or may be established
which are and may be established
for the government thereof,
of the government thereof.
that I will endeavor to support,
I will endeavor to support,
maintain,
maintain,
and defend
and defend
the Constitution
the Constitution
and laws of said state,
and laws of said state,
not inconsistent
not consistent
with the Constitution
with the Constitution
of the United States,
of the United States,
to the best of my knowledge
to the best of my knowledge
and ability,
and ability,
and that I will faithfully
and that I will faithfully
discharge
discharge
the duties of my office
the duties of my office
as council member,
as council member.
so help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, sir. Put your pin on me. Yes, sir. Thank you. All right, and last thing, Councilmember Batts didn't, I don't wear this around town all the time, just walking down the street. Councilmember Batts asked me to, so I appreciate you. All right. Thank you.
Council member, take a seat, please. Did you want to say anything before, okay. Anybody else you want a picture with any other members of your friends or family? Come on up, come on up. Let's get the road back on.
That's not good.
You gonna be in the picture?
Okay, that might help.
Okay, I'll push you one more. Say cheese. Oh, stay right there, just make sure we got it.
Let's get one of the judges with him.
You want me in there?
Yeah,
All right.
get the judge in there.
Across the floor or what? Wherever you want me to get. Good.
Mayor, you don't wanna get in here? That looks good.
Sure, we take a picture, I couldn't tell if you were or weren't.
I was pushing the wrong button.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am, of course.
Get your ball. Okay, thank you. You're welcome to stay if you like, ladies. Okay, welcome again, Councilman. Now, so, We're going to go next to old business, and old business is a nonprofit agency discussion. And I spoke to Councilman Batts before. He has not been involved in this process, so he will not be voting on the outcome of this, since he has not been, as I said, involved in it or have any necessary prior knowledge of the actions that's taking place. So, Mr. Manager, you want to make any comments?
Yes, sir. A couple things to think about for council here. Before you should have a spreadsheet of agency request requirements. This is based off of information we have requested in the past from the finance director. Some of these agencies have submitted all the requirements, some have not. We can go through that. I think council needs to determine if you are going to fund certain organizations or not, if they have not submitted all the proper paperwork. And then we need to think about the performance requirements. We haven't had certain presentations from many of these organizations. Depending on how many you fund, that will take a certain level of staff support and oversight that we haven't necessarily provided in the past. We don't need to figure that out today, but that's a consideration I think you need to think about. And then you need to determine what your voting process is going to be. So you also have a spreadsheet. Every council member submitted how they would spread the funds, $160,000. We averaged them together and came up with an amount of funding that you could fund. And then if certain organizations you don't want to fund because they didn't submit the paperwork or for whatever reason, you can make that determination, and that rest of the money would be available to spread load however you see fit. So I just wanted to provide those thoughts up front and then leave that up to you, sir.
Okay, so as Mr. Salmon said, we did have requirements that were provided to all agencies that submitted a request for funding. You have a spreadsheet that shows you who did and who did not submit the complete listing. And as the manager mentioned also, it's up to us to either waive the absent requirements that were not submitted, or and vote to provide them the funding, whatever that may be, or we delete them from the list because they did not complete and file the required documentation. So does the council have any comment they want to make towards that?
Mayor Ham?
Yes.
I move that we approve the funding as proposed here on the recommended budget with the contingent that no organization received their funds until all documentation is submitted.
Okay. Do we have a motion to keep the listing as scheduled, but they not receive funding until they submitted all the required documentation? I've got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Excuse me.
Based on the information that has not been submitted, I know at one point we talked about certain organizations based on size and their inception date may not have certain documents. So are we gonna, if we do the motion that way, it says to me that these organizations still may not have these documents. So what if they don't have it for another 2 years, or what if they audit differently than the other larger organizations? How do we address that?
So I think that's,
Sure. Certain different organizations of different size, of course, as part of their own financial plans, either have audited financial statements on an annual, triannually, whatever it is basis. I would have to go back to the actual requirements that were posted to be able to answer that question properly. But anything that we posted originally as being required, I would say that those documents would be required. If on the original solicitation, if you will, that we put out, things were required, I would say that they are required. If something was, document A in lieu of document B if circumstances, then I say we follow whatever was originally put out.
So with the, and Madam Clerk, you may can answer this one, the financial statements audited in-house for one particular organization, I will not say their name.
Uh-huh.
It says that we'll request COI waiver from the city manager. What does that process look like? That waiver, what excuses them from having that? So whereas we requested an audit or audit documents, and they're asking for a so what does that look like, is what I'm saying?
Well, I think that's a little bit, there's a difference between the financial statements.
Mm-hmm.
They just, their financial statements were audited by someone in their organization.
Okay.
But the COI that we requested, they did not have a COI
Okay.
at all. So I think in years past that, it's been given the option to the mayor to, do a waiver for COI. Is that right?
The manager.
Manager, from the manager?
You know, the certificate of insurance is not for the city's protection. It's to, for their protection. And am I speaking correct, Mr. Lawrence?
Yes, you're speaking correctly. That's for their own protection in these
Right.
circumstances, unless the finance director has something else to say. The money's been allocated to be given to them, so therefore they're not being contracted to perform services for the city.
Right.
In those circumstances, we do require the COI.
Yep. So, it does speak to the agency though, in terms of them, being more credible if they do have liability insurance.
While I understand that, we are offering them a waiver that says, you, in my mind, define waiver for me, because when I hear waiver, I'm thinking, we will excuse that you don't have it. So while it makes, we can't speak to the organization's integrity and we can't, that's not what we're dealing with facts right here. So if we're saying that this document is necessary, but we're willing to waiver it, then is it necessary? I'm just speaking to the motion, because right now we're saying upon receiving all of these documents, that's when we would disperse the money. But if you give me a waiver for a required document, then the initial requirements kind of goes out the window, in my opinion. I just want to be clear on that. What does that look like? Because we could waiver, what else can be wavered? I guess that's what I'm thinking
Maybe
about.
column by column or issue by issue, you want to determine what you want to waiver. For certain instance, certificate of insurance might be waiverable because it doesn't come back on us, but it talks about the level of, if not credibility, you know, the amount of things they have put together, if you will.
Mayor,
Audited
if I-
financial statements, you can't have one if you haven't
Right.
done it
Mayor,
yet.
if I may, I'd like to amend my motion. All of these organizations, each, I believe it's now public record, certainly if anyone requested it, the agency requests by each council member is putting their own reputation as an elected official, if you will, on the line by saying, I endorse these specific folks to get these specific allotments of money. So Mayor Ham, if you'll allow me, I'd like to amend my motion to fund these organizations based on the recommended budget and remove the second sentence from my original motion. So just fund the nonprofits per the manager's recommended, or council member average recommendation.
Okay. So,
Sorry for befuddling the words there.
so the motion is amended to adopt the average as, the council members' average input, as, shown on the document that was provided to you.
Yes, sir.
Second.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Mayor, just for clarification, again, not trying to be difficult, but this very last column on the chart, and actually entitlement of the chart of the column itself is council member recommended allocations, which is an average of what everybody's allocated, but those are the figures specifically that's to the motion.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Okay. So specifically,
Talking about
You want me to read the title up here?
Yeah.
I couldn't find it when I was looking at it.
council member recommended allocations
Yes, sir.
column. So that's the motion. It's been seconded.
Are there any caveats to that?
You withdrew.
My motion is clean without.
Okay, so we waive whatever they don't provide. Correct?
I think you have to almost take it on a case by case. I mean, there's not everything in here should be waived necessarily.
That's what we need to determine. I'll take direction from council.
I'm gonna give a cautionary statement. You have organizations on equal footing making an application. If you're gonna waive for one, be prepared to waive for others.
Right.
Because you don't wanna have a due process problem where you're treating one unfairly versus another, because you're waiving it here but not waiving it there. So that's a caution I would give you. It's your determination, but that's my caution.
Well, if an agency did submit a budget, that's a significant item.
Sir?
I'm just making a statement here. If an agency did submit a budget, that's a significant item that should be provided. If they,
So, Madam Clerk, just so I'm clear, I'm sorry, Mayor, would you?
Go ahead,
I don't
go
wanna
ahead.
interrupt. Just so I'm clear, to kind of speak to what the mayor just mentioned, with the detailed budget, this particular organization that I'm looking at, is the third one at the bottom, but it says off here in the comments, updated 990, detailed budget, financial statement, COI. Does that mean that's what they're missing,
Yes,
or?
ma'am.
Okay.
That's the documents they're missing, yes, ma'am. And that's after, I think, at least 2 requests for those documents.
My thing is, do they just not have them? I mean, because now it goes back to, I mean, I'm not trying to show partiality to any, I wanna be fair. You know, my recommendation was to split the money between all of them equally, but, if at the beginning of this process, the application was specific to require those documents, then I think that should be required. My only argument was, if we have it right here that it's gonna be wavered, then we have to be clear on what that looks like. So, I'm not saying bend the rules at all, that's not what I'm trying to say, and I hope that's clear. But, you know,
And I'm really not sure what's been wavered in the past, because all this has been has been through finance before, and I'm not sure what they can waive. That would be probably a Catherine question of what's allowed to be waived, I'm not sure.
So we haven't been super strict on, because remember, we started with no rules when I came to work here.
that's right.
Catherine?
So, you know, we have started,
Sorry.
So we started with no rules when we came here, and so, in the fact that I have to handle insurance, what we're looking at is that we are contracting to provide services that the city of Goldsboro has the legal, constitutional right to provide. So, as I was talking to Ron, the having the COI does protect us too, because if somebody were to get hurt, then we gave them money to provide that service, so we could get sued as well. So in the past, we haven't been super strict with the COI, but in this past year, I've tried to be. We've got new insurance advisors. They've advised us that we should be requiring the certificate of insurance. So that's why we're asking. So far, we've had most everybody can comply. We have a few of the really small organizations that I think probably struggle with the money part of it. So that's the big thing. So we look at it on a case-by-case basis. If you're giving somebody $1,000 and then they got to pay $4,000 for general liability insurance, so we try to be fair. That's what we're looking at. So same thing with the audits. We know some of these people, in the statute, it says if you give more than $1,000, you can require an audit. It doesn't say you have to. My threshold of my level of being comfortable that I've told the manager is if we give them more than 5, we should ask for an audit. And in that case, if they can't provide one, and let's say they got $6,000, I just ask the manager to sign off on it, because if I'm the one that's got to look over and check off these documents, I shouldn't be the one to say, waive it. I need somebody above me to say it's okay to waive that requirement, but it's trying to protect the city is really what it is.
so let me go back to a statement I made a while ago, which you addressed just now, again, on the certificate of insurance.
Mm-hmm.
I said it doesn't impact the city. You're saying it does impact the city, and I defer to you. So if it does, then I see that's more important than it was under my statement.
It is important, and I think you have to look at it in context. You know, if if we were to give somebody $500 or $1,000 and they didn't have a certificate of insurance and something happened, we're taking that risk on ourselves. And, you know, that starts getting into legal terminology about whether you can get sued or who's going to sue you and what they're going to sue you for. So it is to protect the city because we're asking somebody to provide a service for us instead of our employees providing it. So if we want to take that risk, it's okay as long as, you know, the council and the manager are okay with that. So that's why I asked the manager. I have a form that I fill out and I give it to him and he signs off on it. So.
Well,
I don't want to sign off on it unless you're all signing off on it.
Well, I think that's important. I mean,
I do too.
to
I do
protect
too.
it. I mean, you know, I get it.
I originally made the motion for these reasons, but also recognizing something that we discussed a few months ago, which was that we don't have a very strict rubric and we were not able to decide on a very strict rubric. And in trying to move this forward so that these organizations can finalize their fiscal year budgets, I think that funding this at the recommended allocation, moving this on, and next year having very stringent guidelines that can be followed is in the council's best interest, because we have a lot of people on this chart that have dedicated a lot of their time and their own money to their organizations and to these submittals, and I don't know that next year all of them will be eligible.
Yep.
Because I think that our criteria has to be robust. But where we are today, we put out I'm using solicitation, that's not the right thing, I'm not in procurement, but you know, we put out a solicitation for applications, and where we are right now, I think the cleanest way to get this thing moved through council, and so that the finance director and so the city manager are able to do their jobs with relative comfort, is the funding at the recommended allocations. Each of these organizations, every council member was asked to submit a recommended funding line item with full knowledge of who had submitted what and who had not. And we made the recommendations that we made. Those are on the record, those are public. I'm sure folks will ask. And so with that, knowing that each of us who believes that we know our community as well as anyone else, this is where we averaged at.
So let me add just a comment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Let me just add a comment. None of us, including myself, had seen the individual input until today when it was released by request. So there were no individual council member that saw any input of another's, with exception of myself. I did see Councilman Gaylor because he copied me on his email, but that was not by request. I had not seen any other members' input until today when it was released to all of us. So we've got the motion made and second to adopt the council member recommended allocations as provided this afternoon. Is there any further discussion?
Okay, so just so I'm clear, you guys, your motion, Councilman Gaylor, is to say all of these organizations will be funded, knowing that we just had this, detailed conversation about the certificate of insurance. There are 2 organizations who don't have it. So we are still including them in this funding process, right?
That's
That
correct.
is my motion, yes, ma'am.
Any further discussion?
I personally think, as a council person, that you should always have insurance. I would hate for this year to go by and something happen, and then we are liable because we allocated this money knowing that they didn't have insurance. And I'm hearing from Ms. Catherine that the organizations, the nonprofit, didn't know that they had to have insurance. Is that correct?
Some may not have, because I did have a couple of calls on that they didn't know they had to have insurance.
It was requested for sure. information was
So
requested.
if this was something that was I haven't even, just writing this month, I, have seen some of, if it was requested and they did not provide it,
Maybe we could go back with the thought that if they provide that, then you'll give them the funding, if you have that much concern about it.
I would feel better with that.
Was it requested or required? Because, I mean,
yeah,
I'm not
so-
trying to be facetious, but those are two.
What I'm suggesting is if council deems it important enough that we require a certificate of insurance, and once they provide that, then we would provide the funding.
So as I see it, we can vote on the amendment, which is simply, do we require certificate of insurance as a criteria, yes or no? And then based on that amendment, then if we're gonna do Robert's rules, let's do Robert's rules. So let's vote on the amendment, and then after that, then we can vote on the actual motion.
Okay?
Just, sorry,
Go for it.
procedural clarity, okay? We have a motion on the floor that's been seconded. That motion on the floor that's been seconded was you funded the nonprofits element with the column allocation on the far right side. Now we're going back and saying we're gonna make a further amendment to that motion? That's,
The main motion on the floor would be to fund per the manager's recommended, council member recommended allocations. And then I thought I heard, didn't phrase it this way, but I move we amend the main motion by.
Could he withdraw the original motion and then
Yes.
submit a second
Okay.
motion?
yes,
Another
we
motion
can,
with that in it?
we can have the motions withdrawn and start all over.
And
I'll
then-
withdraw.
Okay. Now you can submit it with the caveat there.
Back to the one with certificate of insurance specifically,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Hey, we're getting close on this thing, we're getting warm. Mayor Ham, I move we, approve the councilmember recommended allocations as presented with contingent that all must have certificate of insurance before receiving any funding.
Okay. Second. Motion's made, Mr. Broadway, second. Any
Councilwoman
discussion?
Jones, Councilwoman
Sorry.
Jones seconded.
No, I had seconded, but it doesn't
Okay,
matter.
no,
As long as
you-
it's
you
seconded,
seconded.
I have. I'm good.
Give Ms. Jones credit for the second, since it was her issue.
Yep, okay.
Okay. Any discussion on the current, motion? If not, all in favor of adopting the council member recommended allocations with the caveat of the COI as mentioned, please raise your hand. Thank God. Okay. Let me put this thing to bed. Okay, this was, all of the, items of the of the work session. Now, we have time, so thank you, Judge, for coming.
We're gonna find a courtroom, this is too complicated.
We have time for the consent agenda
Mr. Mayor,
items.
Mr. Mayor,
So.
the clerk, Mr. Mayor, the
New,
clerk.
new business?
Hold
Sorry.
on for 1 sec. Did you need to address the chamber?
Yes. So the Chamber of Commerce is,
I'm sorry.
there
You're
are
right.
two pieces we need to do separately for this. Chamber of Commerce is something that the mayor sits on, and wages is something Councilman Broadway sits on. So we need to approve wages separately for that amount, and we need, Chamber of Commerce is not included in this 160,000. There's additional 20,000 that was moved there, so that you could have a separate vote on that agency. Is that clear?
So why weren't they included in the 160?
Because when the new Senate Bill 473, I believe is the number, came out, we had not considered that. But then we figured later on, it used to be in the, I believe, the mayor council's budget line to fund the chamber directly, but because the mayor sits on that board, he should not vote for that. So we moved it out of the budget line there, where you approved everything together, so that we could approve this separately, and he could recuse himself from that specific vote. And we need to do the same thing for wages, because Councilman Broadway sits on wages. So while you just approved all those, I would ask for a separate approval for, or do we need to redo it?
Well, I think all 6 voted, so even if the vote didn't count, because somebody said, well, he shouldn't have voted, you still have 5. So you still have more than a majority to approve it. If somebody argues and say, well, he shouldn't have voted, it wasn't like if the vote was 4-3 and it was,
Okay.
and that was the tiebreaker, so I don't think
But
that's.
should we
any-
still do it just to be
You can do it just to
politically
be clear.
correct?
we
You
should
can,
do
just
it.
to be
Okay.
clear,
Yes,
but
please.
I think otherwise we'd be okay.
So is that, vote that I just thanked good Lord for, is it invalid now?
No.
Sir?
I think,
I think we need to have a separate motion.
Yeah.
For wages.
And you request to be recused for the chamber.
Right.
Then go ahead, somebody makes a motion to approve for the chamber. Then somebody second, y'all vote on it. Then you do a separate one for wages. Same thing, Mr. Broadway, request to be excused from that because of the conflict. And then y'all make a motion to approve it, second it, vote on it.
Okay, let's go with wages first. And, Mr. Broadway, Councilman Broadway will recuse himself from the vote.
Mr. Mayor,
Wait.
I request to recuse myself from the vote on the wages.
In favor?
Second.
Yeah.
Okay.
We need, Mayor, need to vote on it. You gotta, he's requested, somebody needs to make a motion, he's recused, somebody second, then y'all vote on it.
He's second.
Okay, second.
But you never vote.
But you didn't vote, you just said motion and then seconded, so we need to
Second.
vote.
All in favor of recusing, Councilman Broadway, raise your hand. Okay, thank you.
Who made the motion? Who made the motion?
Broadway.
He requested to
He
be
just requested to be
recused.
recused.
Yeah, somebody else made the motion.
I make a motion that, Mr. Broadway be recused from the wages vote.
Second.
Thank you.
Now, all in favor of recusing Councilman Broadway, raise your hand. Thank you. The amount, the average amount for wages was, correct me, Madam Clerk, is $10,148. Correct?
Yes, sir.
All in favor of approving that amount, please raise your hand. Okay, the motion carries. Now I request to be recused from the chamber funding.
I make a motion that Mayor Ham be recused from the vote on the Chamber of Commerce budget.
Second.
All in favor? Okay, can I still preside, or does the
Council, the Mayor Pro Tem needs to preside.
preside?
All those in favor of the proposed council member recommended allocation for Chamber of Commerce, raise your right hand. Those in opposition, have the same?
It's not on that list.
Okay.
That's a separate amount, so you'll need to state that separate amount. Since it's not on that list,
What
you'll
is that
just
amount?
approved.
It's on your letter
Yeah.
that you got in your folder.
20.
Mayor Pro Tem Pollock, I move we approve the Chamber of Commerce for the $20,000 allotment.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
All right.
And I thank God again.
thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's see.
New business or consent?
I'm just getting ahead of myself.
Major
We have
holiday
some new
should be
business
next.
here.
Major holiday should be next. New business, field teams and drum corps,
Yes,
correct?
yes. Yes. Come on in, sir.
Good
Evening, sir.
afternoon, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. Before I begin, I need to apologize. I'm not a public speaker. I'm a
Been up here enough,
I'm a
I'm sure.
craftsman, and I spend my time
I
with
say
my
that
workbench.
with respect, sir, I'm not being
Yes, sir.
disrespectful.
Yes, sir. 8 or 9 years ago, a local educator brought me to Goldsboro to do a job. And unfortunately, I haven't been unable to complete that job. I packed up my gear and my shop, and I moved to Goldsboro And when I went to that educator to find out when we could begin the work, I found out that he had received a job from another school district and had left town. And so I was unable to do what he brought me here to do. My family wants me to come home, but I haven't done what I came to do, and I'm not a person that leaves a job undone. I like to get the job done. Let me give you a bit of my story. When I was in middle school, or we called it junior high back in the days, every summer I'd ask my mother to allow me to go to Brooklyn, New York to spend the summer with my uncle and his family. And my uncle was an officer in a youth organization in Brooklyn called the Blue Jacket Guard. And it was a massive youth organization. I mean, every area of Brooklyn had a unit of this youth organization. I brought some pictures. I'm going to pass them out in a minute. From that activity, I fell in love with marching, with drill teams. I finished high school. I joined the Air Force. After the Air Force, started my university studies. And then after my junior year, after my sophomore year, I joined the Philadelphia Police Department. And I also got married. My wife and I, we agreed to form a boys' drill team because I loved drill teams after spending the time with my uncle. We went to the local Catholic school, the priest of the Catholic church down the street from where we lived, and he allowed us to use the basement of the school to do a boys' drill team. Well, we got started, and one of the boys inappropriately addressed one of the girls of the school, and the priest said, "No, you got to get out of here." So we left there, and a local realtor had a orphanage that under his responsibility, and he said, "Why don't you use that building until you can find another place?" And it was a beautiful, beautiful building where children had lived,
Thank you, sir. Thanks, sir.
Thank you, sir.
When I moved to Raleigh, my son and daughter went to Shaw University, and I moved to Raleigh to be close to them. I started a boys' drill team at a place called the Tarboro Road Community Center. And you see on the front page of this booklet I gave you, you see a gentleman, captain, his name is Captain E.L. Brown. Captain Brown was a Buffalo soldier. He passed away in 2011. And with him is a young man, Cadet Captain William Bradshaw. And I'll tell you more about him a little later. If you open the book, the next two or three pages is the Blue Jacket Guard, Brooklyn, New York. And if you notice, they have units sometimes when they marched in a parade, they took up 5 blocks of New York City with the length of their organization. I mean, it was a massive organization. A retired naval captain formed it, and it was awesome. I mean, really awesome. After my wife and I started our drill team in Philadelphia, you'll see In Baltimore on that day, that was a Sunday afternoon, we marched in a huge parade in Baltimore. And at the end of that parade, we won first place trophy, and it was a trophy about so high, about 4 or 5 tiers. And I told one of the cadets, I said, this is your responsibility, take care of this trophy. So on our way home, we had the habit of always stopping at the Merlin House to feed the youngsters. Anyone know the Merlin House? It's between Philadelphia and DC area. Well, we always stopped there, and it had in those days it had 2 restaurants. One that was a cafeteria on the ground floor, and a sit-down with waiters on the second floor. So I decided, boy, they had won this big trophy. We're going to go upstairs and sit down and have the waiters wait on the youngsters. I said, my wife's going to kill me when she finds out how much money I spent on feeding these kids. Well, when the kids got off the bus, they had taken off their uniform jackets, and because it was hot that day. And I told them, get back on the bus and get your uniforms on. We're going upstairs. So they all got dressed again. We went upstairs, had our meal, and after it was over, I asked the maitre d' to give me the bill. He said, sir, someone has already paid your bill. The youngsters looked so good. They were so well disciplined, and I was so happy because I didn't have to explain my way how I spend the money to feed all those youngsters. On the next page, you see the youngsters doing a drill thing. It's called the Queen Anne Salute, and they won first place that day. The next page, every year we had a princess ball, and we had all the older boys would bring their girlfriends, and we had a really nice dance. And you notice the uniforms that they're wearing? Those are West Point cadet uniforms that they were used uniforms that we had a uniform company give them to us. We always kept our youngsters looking like they were in a military school. On the next page, this is the group I put together in Raleigh, and we were known as the Tarboro Road Cadets because we practiced at Tarboro Road Community Center. You see that tall youngster on the end, on the left with the glasses? His name is Amir Bahanu. Amir now has an LLD, and he's a supervisor, administrator at Food and Drug Administration in Washington, D.C. So proud of that young man. And you see the different pictures. On the next page, you see the youngsters are doing, we were at the state capitol, and we did a drill demonstration and with them, the young man, the gentleman in the military uniform is Captain Darby. We had to ask Captain Darby to relieve himself of our organization because he was verbally abusive to the youngsters, and sometimes he would even use profanity, and we couldn't have that. If you see the pictures with all the musical instruments, we had some at Cheney University. I'm sorry, at St. Augustine's University, some musical majors. They said they would help us start a drum and bugle corps. So we went out to the fairgrounds, at the flea market at the fairgrounds, and yard sales, and you can see all the instruments that we accumulated, and they were stored at St. Augustine's University, and there was a fire there, and we lost everything that we had there. All those musical instruments, we lost them all in a fire. And the last 2 pages, well, years ago they used to have the Wings Over Wayne air show at Seymour Johnson, and that year we brought the youngsters to be a part of that air show. And if you notice the young man on the right, his name is William Bradshaw. He's also the young man on the front page, on the front cover. At the time when we took that picture at Seymour Johnson, he was just 10 years old and had just joined the group, I think, about 2 or 3 weeks before that. The picture on the front cover, he had risen to the rank of cadet captain, and he was the cadet commander of the drill team at that time. I talked to William Bradshaw 3 or 4 days ago. He has completed an MCAT and is preparing to enter medical school. I'm so proud of that young man, I don't know what to do. And the reason why I'm very, Seymour Johnson Air Force Base has thousands and thousands of young men and women that go through that gate and keep those beautiful airplanes flying in the sky. But they don't let them touch those multi-million-dollar aircrafts until they have gained one thing, and that's discipline. And we're losing our young people for the lack of one word, and that's discipline. The first thing you learn how to do in the military, the very first thing you learn how to do and do well is march. And that's how discipline is instilled. And I'm convinced that if we could get some organizations, I've been to the American Legion, I've been to the Masons, I've been to churches, and but no one seems to be interested. And I'm sure, listen, we spend, for adults, we spend anywhere from $20,000 to $30,000 a year to keep an adult incarcerated. Juveniles between $15,000 and $25,000 a year. With that kind of money, can you imagine what we could be doing with that kind of money? And we spend it to just lock them up. That makes no sense. Makes no sense. I'm convinced that if the council could come up with an idea of how we can, I'd like to see it done in churches, because I'd like to see youngsters going to church if it's just for a drill team. But they need to be going to church so that I'm going to get away from the foolishness that goes on around their neighborhoods. I'm just about talked out. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Well, sir, as a career military person, you're absolutely right about discipline.
Yeah.
The first thing that we need to learn in our life from the time that we are able to understand conversation is discipline.
Yes.
The child right on up to the time that we planted in the grave or put in the incinerator, whichever. But and every day here in Goldsboro, we read another incident from the police department about a shooting or some type of activity, and it stems from discipline.
Yeah, lack of it.
In the home.
Yes.
I'm not want to get on a soapbox here and talk, preach or whatever, but you're absolutely right. Churches should be a place where they learn discipline. For my specific church, we have a very active Boy Scout, Cub Scout program, and that contributes to discipline. Back in the day, and when I was a youth, at your age, I'm older than you, but I'm trying to be complimentary here to you. But
I'm 85.
A lot of churches here in Goldsboro sponsor Boy Scout troops.
Yeah.
That's not the situation anymore.
No.
The drum corps that we've had here in Goldsboro, I've seen them present their routines several times. They've been out of state competing, and not competing necessarily, but demonstrating and so forth and marching. I don't think a member of this council would deny or object to what you're saying, that we need some type of opportunity here for these kids to learn discipline and have something to be proud of and affiliated with. I don't have an answer to give you at this point, but I certainly side with you on that.
Yeah. Well, I was here several months ago, and I noticed that the city of Goldsboro and the council, some of it came from the council, approved $92,000 to put a train to ride around inside of Hermit Park. And I'm sure if you can come up with that kind of money for a toy for the kids to enjoy in Hermit Park, you should be able to come up with some money to help save some of these youngsters. We're losing too many. I was a former police officer, like I said, and I worked with the juvenile division and the gang control unit. And those kids are, I mean, they're smart. We had one gang, they had a thing they called a Pied Piper. And they would take a length of plumbing pipe, metal plumbing pipe. One boy would hold it with 2 vice grips, and another boy would put a 12-gauge shotgun shell in the back of that pipe and smack it with a ball-peen hammer, and it worked. You know, and I mean, and they were killing each other. As a matter of fact, that's why I left the police department, because every night I'd come home some nights and cry. My wife couldn't understand, what's this grown man coming home crying? I mean, to look at dead children, man. I mean, it tore me up. It tore me up. And I just want to, anything I can do to help, but I want to, well, you know what I want to do.
Let me clarify something you just said. On the train, the city did not fund the train.
Oh, I said this, but it came from the city community.
correct.
Yeah, and I'm saying that kind of money
Agreed.
could be spent on a train. Just think of what we could do to save some of our children.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Sir. Anybody got any comment they want to ask Mr. Holiday?
Mr. Holiday,
Yes,
if
ma'am.
somebody listening wanted to contact you to further discuss, how do you suggest they get in contact with you?
Well, first of all, I forgot to mention in the flyleaf on the back of that front page of that picture is a list of churches that I've visited, and they have the asset. They have the no, in here, right behind the front picture. There's a list of churches that I've suggested might be, but I'm available.
Mr. Major, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
As Mayor Ham stated about the churches and the Boy Scout troops, which I used to be a scoutmaster at First African, a lot of the kids at the churches have aged out. So I think a recommendation would be to go to the schools, because you can go to church now, you may see, I'm 44 years old, and the next youngest person next to me at my church is probably 26. So my recommendation, being that I work in the school system, I teach at the high school level. I think the recruitment may need to start maybe elementary, just so you can get your, and I'm not trying to tell you how to run your program,
Well,
but I think you have a better turnout, not only with parental, support, because you go to North Drive, when they have open house, and that has, I think, still kindergarten and first grade, you can see the parking lot jam-packed on orientation night. As they grow older and become middle school age and high school age, I'm lucky to get 6 parents come out on the high school level on orientation night. So just a recommendation I think would be to usher them into this when they're still engaged physically. Because as they get older, and I'm just saying, because I try to ask my students all the time, come to the council meetings. Don't complain about what's not happening in Goldsboro. Stand behind that podium and tell us what you need. I beg them. I've been doing it since I've been in this seat. But I think that this is just my recommendation. I think, and I'll help you, assist you in any way in the school, within the city or in the county, because I'm trying to start an Explorers program with my fire department for recruitment for that. But at that age, as they get older, the things of that, like you said, discipline, which needs to be instilled in them early anyway, I think you'll have a better success rate if you introduce this at the school level. Not discouraging the churches, but it's hard enough to keep the kids, the youth, I'm just speaking on experience from my church, the youth engaged on that level, as far as the young men at the disciplinary level that you're trying to, because what I face in school, especially in my community, the resistance of a man telling, do this, do that. It's a culture that they need to be acclimated to at a young age. And I just think, and I'm willing, as you know, we've met at the lodge and
Yes, sir.
talked years ago
Yes, sir.
about this same thing, and tried to organize, and I've never stopped trying to recruit. But like I said, I think we'd be better at a youth, at elementary, and then trying to recruit at the schools, and maybe they'll have some, and not only that, we could be mentors at the same time if they
Absolutely.
choose not to march. If we could just be a presence with them. In the Masonic organization, we have what we call the Knights of Pythagoras, in our organization, and we usher, we help the parents out with the young men, but to attach ourselves to that, you can never do enough. So that's just my recommendation.
Yes,
And
sir.
I applaud you for your
Yes, sir.
dedication.
Well, I like to say that we try to get the youngsters when they're young, and we say before they smell themselves.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we like to
Yes,
get
sir.
them and get them involved. I'd like to ask a question. The old Dillard High School, who controls that?
We'll say the county.
That's the
I don't know
county?
for sure.
Yeah, because it's a beautiful building that sits in the middle of a much needed area, and it needs to be put to use. I have a skill, and I've shared my skill with the council. I want to apprentice 3 or 4 youngsters. I can't find them ready to sit down because I don't have any place for them. I can't have them come into my shop and in my house. But a place, I've talked to roofers and plumbers and carpenters. A lot of men would like to share their skills if they had a place where they could do that. You know.
Mr. Holiday, I want to thank you for this packet you put together. It's very
Yes, sir.
informative. I know that's something you're proud of. There's a story behind every picture that, beyond what you've
Yes, sir.
said already. And obviously, you're proud of what you were participating in over the years.
Yes, sir. And it works. It works. Once they get involved in it, because they're always, the youngsters always ask, where we going this week? Where we going? They're always, because we're going someplace, They're tired of just sitting around the community,
I might add one more thing. Today, I heard that the United States Army recruiting numbers are very low, the lowest they've been in 50 years.
Yeah.
The lowest they've been in 50 years. It's because the youth today, aside from the criteria that has, you have a pretty good criteria of all friends, all services for entry, but still, the interest in serving your country and your city and so forth is just not there today like it was back in our time.
And one thing I wanted to mention about churches, I think folks forget the fact that churches are the non-political centers of the community, and they're not serving that role. They need to be reminded that they're the non-political centers of the community. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, we've got a presentation of new core. We've got a spokesperson here, I believe. Okay.
Good evening, councilmen and women. Welcome aboard, Councilman Batts. As a former basketball coach, I recall your presence alongside the court. Mayor, I think the only thing he needs right now is a whistle around his neck, because he has known that many a young man has followed his guidelines along the court side, as well as coaches that on occasion he had to use it against as well. So.
Maybe we can ask him to wear one to council meetings and he can blow it when people get out of hand.
Absolutely, he can do a good job with that. Good to see you. Welcome aboard. As you will recall, in March of 2020, Goldsboro City Council entered into a cooperative agreement between the North Carolina Department of Public Safety, Office of Recovery and Resiliency, NCORE, to assist NCORE in carrying out the rebuild buyout program by accepting ownership of buyout properties damaged by Hurricanes Matthew and Florence. Tonight, Ms. Baggy Badaglin is in attendance. She is NCORE's buyout manager within NCORE's Program Management's office. Ms. Badaglin will provide an overview of the strategic buyout program tonight, highlighting strategic and high-impact activities to mitigate disaster risk and reduce future losses within our Goldsboro communities. Later at tonight's 7 o'clock meeting, the City Council will consider acceptance of our first 2 properties here in Goldsboro in accordance with program guidelines, and this will be done through a recommendation by planning staff for your approval, as well as a resolution of approval for these 2 properties. So without further ado, I'll introduce Ms. Maggie Badaglin.
Good evening, ma'am. Welcome.
Good afternoon. Thank you all. Thank you, members of the council, Mr. Mayor, for inviting me here to speak today. My name is Maggie Bataglan, and I am buyout manager for the North Carolina Office of Recovery and Resiliency. Here to provide an overview. I did provide some slides. I don't know, are they going to show?
You've got a slide,
Oh, I'm sorry. That's on me. Cool. Look at this. Oh. There.
He's getting it pulled up.
Oh.
She's gonna get it pulled up and she
I will be
figures it
patient.
out. I think it should do is mash this button here, and that's what you have.
Thank you. Well, I'll go ahead and get started while we pull these up. So I manage the Rebuild NC Strategic Buyout Program. The Strategic Buyout Program is a voluntary program that works to permanently reduce risk to the life and property of North Carolinians by purchasing storm-impacted and at-risk properties. After these properties are purchased, they are owned by the local government, and their structures, any property on them, are demolished, and the land there has to remain in open space for perpetuity. This is a voluntary program. It's locally collaborative. I'll show you the areas that we're doing buyouts in. Those were delineated with support and collaboration from the staff here locally. And again, they permanently reduce risk because they are removing those structures and the people who live in them from flood-prone areas. As Mr. Talton mentioned, we entered into an agreement between the North Carolina Office of Recovery and Resiliency and the City of Goldsboro back in March 2020, and have been taking applications since then. The program has multiple benefits. As I've stated, it reduces the risk to life and property of North Carolinians. We work really hard to preserve the community character and tax base through an incentive structure that encourages folks to relocate within their same communities, just outside an area that's in the floodplain or at high risk. We support high need areas. We are a HUD-funded program. I'll go into our funding sources a little bit later. But we are funded by a HUD grant, which requires that we focus on communities that are low to moderate income. We also support community planning and resiliency through this program. And I was so excited to hear that the City of Goldsboro entered into an agreement with the Coastal Dynamics Design Lab from NC State recently. That is a planning effort that we are funding as well, that will really thread in nicely with the buyout program and will help to identify opportunities for those properties and how they can better support Goldsboro and its flood resiliency. As I mentioned, we are funded by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development's Community Development Block Grant for Mitigation, or CDBG MIT. This is a grant that's focused on making communities more resilient for flood risks generally, and is related to North Carolina's experiences with Hurricane Matthew and Hurricane Florence. We work with communities to identify these buyout zones, and then we enter into a cooperative agreement. Once that cooperative agreement is signed, we begin taking applications with the people who own properties within those buyout zones. We provide case management services individually to all people who apply for this program, so they're supported through the process, and we ensure that all of the program requirements are met. This includes title services that we provide. We do required inspections, which include boundary surveys, appraisals, lead-based paint and asbestos testing, environmental reviews, and anything else that's required by federal regulation. And we end up making an offer. So these two properties that we are speaking about today, we've formally made offers to those applicants, to those homeowners, and they have both accepted them, and we're ready to move towards closing. Once that offer is accepted, we arrange the closing, and ownership of those properties goes straight from the individual to the city, and the funding is provided 100% by the grant. There's no funding that the local government has to provide at that point. NCOR then will fund the demolition of the structure, make sure that the property is cleared and graded and seeded appropriately, and then from that point on, local government is responsible for any ongoing maintenance with that property. The parcels must comply with federal requirements that require them to remain open in perpetuity, which just means that something can't ever be built there again. So we offer in our program current fair market value for the buyouts, and so that's a little bit different than some other buyout programs that do a pre-storm value. But we did an analysis recently and noticed that real estate values had improved beyond what they were in 2016 for communities affected by Matthew. So we've decided to do current fair market buyouts, which streamlines program administration. Once we do that appraisal, all property owners will receive an initial offer package, which I believe you have some of that in front of you. The owners then are presented with an opportunity to accept or reject that offer. If they accept, we proceed. If even one owner of the property rejects, we make no further attempt to acquire the property because, again, this is a voluntary program, which is very important for us to reiterate over and over. I spoke a little bit about our incentives earlier, so we offer a risk reduction incentive. We have two buckets of incentives. Our first one is the risk reduction. That is up to it's just a flat payment, of $10,000 to folks in addition to what their property is worth. If they move from an area from their buyout property to an area of reduced risk, which is outside the flood zone within their same county. If they move outside the county but remain in North Carolina, that payment is reduced to $5,000. And if they relocate out of North Carolina or to an area that's back in the flood zone, they are not eligible to receive that.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, please?
On the first 10,000,
Yes.
is there a time limit as to how long they have to stay within the county?
So we require that they establish permanent residence, which means that if they purchase a house, they have to provide us with the documentation saying they purchased it. If they rent a property, they have to do it they have to show us a 1-year lease.
They don't have to live in it for any
No.
length of time? Okay, thank you.
Our next incentive is our affordability incentives. Here we have 3 different options that are sort of customizable based on somebody's unique circumstances. The affordable rental incentive is up to $17,000 to supplement rent for 1 year. That's based on family size and their need and the county that they're in. The affordable home ownership incentive is our most generous incentive. That is a contribution. We recognize, of course, that we're working in communities that are low to moderate income. A lot of their assets may be tied up in these houses, and they may not have the finances necessary to purchase a house that's in an area that's outside the floodplain. And so this is really intended to provide people with the funding necessary to move somewhere safer. This requires a relationship and a sort of endorsement from a housing counselor that this amount is what is necessary to make this move affordable for them. It varies by county, but here in Wayne County it is up to $150,000. So again, requires a housing counselor to sort of work with them, identify what they can afford, and we make sure that we're giving them the money that they need to move somewhere safer. Our third incentive in this bucket is our matching down payment incentive, and this is a 1-for-1 match up to $50,000 to, again, incentivize them to move outside of the floodplain locally. Yes. Mm-hmm.
1 and 2 is again above the purchase price of the house.
All 3 of them are.
All
Yes,
3,
sir.
okay.
And all of these ones are require that the applicant moves within the county.
Yeah.
So these ones are all, envisioned to drive people to safer neighborhoods here locally. So we have 2 active buyout zones here in Goldsboro. We call this one the West Goldsboro buyout zone. The other one we call the South Goldsboro buyout zone. Here on this map, these light gray tiles, I guess, are properties that are within our buyout zone. So these are people who are eligible to apply for our program. And again, these buyout zones were derived from a collaborative process with the city back in late 2019, early 2020. The blue tiles here symbolize the properties that have actually applied for this program. So you can see that we're very active. We've got a lot of really good work going on, and we have 30 total applications. And so the 2 properties that have accepted offers from this program are within this buyout zone. Additionally, I asked that we included the darker gray parcels, which show properties that are already owned by local government, either the city of Goldsboro or the county. And the properties that have the orange dots on them applied for a different buyout program funded by FEMA after Hurricane Matthew. And so I wanted to include this to show that, you know, in some areas, the work that we're doing consolidates and builds off of programs that have already taken place here locally. Yes, so the first two buyouts are in this zone, and we're very, very excited that those offers were accepted and looking forward to closing. Our second buyout zone here is the South Goldsboro buyout zone. This one we have a little bit less activity in. We have 10 total applications. We have had some difficulty in this area identifying property owners, which is a problem that we see in these neighborhoods sometimes. And so we're working with the city to try to identify those folks. Here there is also the same sort of key follows. So the darker gray parcels are already under local government ownership. The orange dots have applied for buyouts under other programs, but we have not yet made an offer within this area. So the local partnership in this program is really critical. While NCORE is responsible for all of the program administration and implementation, our partnerships are really the backbone of the program and allow us to pursue these buyouts in a really targeted and impactful way. So in December of 2019 is when we started this process of identifying these buyout zones. Those were formalized in March of 2020 through the adoption of the cooperative agreement and the execution of that. And then hopefully here today we will pass a resolution to accept the first two buyout properties. And that brings me to the end of my presentation. I wanted to keep it nice and short for y'all, but I'm happy to take any questions that anybody may have.
Any questions?
So obviously this is fantastic for the property owners and fantastic for the citizens of the state. From the city perspective though, there are some challenges there, right? Mm-hmm. You know, we're losing the tax base for every one of those properties, and then we're receiving a liability in perpetuity. Mm-hmm. Have you seen anyone come up with creative uses for those spaces yet, to where they're something other than just a liability?
Yeah, so I think that that's one of the reasons I'm really excited about your partnership with the Coastal Dynamics Design Lab. They've done a lot of great work in Princeville, in Lumberton, and Pollocksville. They're doing some work right now in Whiteville that's funded through us as well. And part of what they do that's so great is they identify viable opportunities that make these buyouts a community asset. So in Lumberton, they're bringing about a community walking trail that sort of helps educate folks about the floodplain and allows them to enjoy it without having their property at risk. There are other communities I've seen that do community gardens on these properties. They do lease back with the neighboring property if there is a neighboring property, so that person essentially has twice as big of a yard. As long as it's sort of within the confines of the program, it's allowable. The agreement that we do have asks that we are able to authorize that just to ensure that it's compliant with federal requirements. But there's a lot of additive properties that these properties can have for the community.
So they can still be used in some way, they just can't have finite or actual structures
exactly
built on them.
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly.
Thank you.
All right, absolutely.
Any other questions?
Thank you very much. That's exciting.
Mayor,
Yes, thank you.
I was also going to say it can go back to natural habitat, right?
Yes, exactly. So in some communities, folks will have them sort of rewild and become, in Whiteville, they're probably going to have it become a natural infrastructure solution is the technical term, where some of that land essentially retains or adds capacity to the floodplain and makes flooding less bad in future storms.
May I ask one additional question? I'm sorry, I don't mean to play too many questions tonight. Have you seen any of your other constituent municipalities do any sort of incentive on top of the incentive to keep folks in the city? Because obviously right now you get the incentive if you leave the city. Mm-hmm. But have you seen anyone come up with a good solution for incentivizing staying in the city?
So just to correct one point that I might not have been clear on, the incentives are really structured to to encourage people to relocate locally. So we have them on a county by county basis. Right. And our housing counselors will work with the applicants to encourage them to move locally within Goldsboro. The city of Lumberton, I'm aware, has done a program that I'm not quite familiar on the details of, but I know that it was specifically for folks who had benefited from an acquisition following one of these storms.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Councilman
Can we-
Gaylor, that was one of my reasons for asking the question earlier about the time limits staying in the city. We don't want them to move outside the city
Right.
necessarily, or leave Goldsboro.
I don't want them to receive a $10,000 incentive to move north of Goldsboro.
Right, correct.
I mean, don't get me wrong, that's their right, but I'd love to find a way for them to stay in Goldsboro.
And planning will speak to those two properties later on.
Yes,
this
sir.
evening. Any other questions? Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Great, thank you all.
Nice presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, I believe, let's see, it's 6:20 at this point in time. We have time to go over the consent agenda. So if there's no other items or questions on things we've covered, we'll move to the consent agenda. Mr. Manager?
Yes, sir. Finance?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This evening, I have several surplus properties. Our first one is to accept or reject the initial bid and authorize finance to advertise for upset bids on 300 Wayne Avenue to Mr. Larry D. Coley Jr. We have received an offer on this city-owned property, and the offer is Mr. Larry D. Coley Jr. The offer is $1,590 even. The bid deposit is $80. The tax value is $3,180. The offer is at least 50% of the tax value of the property, and the bid deposit of 5% has been received in the form of cash. And at this time, I would just ask the council to either accept or reject the offer on 300 Wayne Avenue.
Any comment?
That's a good deal.
Can I have a show of hands to accept this bid? Raise your hand again, please. You got it, Madam Clerk?
Okay, thank you. My next item is to
Councilmember Matz, you could vote on these, okay? I saw you didn't vote, and just as a reminder, if the mayor calls for a yes or no vote, and you vote yes, or if you don't vote at all, if he calls for a no vote, and you still don't vote at all, it's gonna be counted as a yes because you're present, okay? But Mayor, we did need a motion
Yeah.
to accept or reject the bid, and then the second, and then.
Okay,
approval of
let's
it.
go back to that.
Okay.
Do I have a motion to accept the bid?
So
As
moved.
presented.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? All in favor of accepting the bid as presented, raise your hand.
Thank you, Mayor.
My next item is accept or reject the initial bid and authorize finance to advertise for upset bids for 900 North Virginia Avenue Street to Janice Johnson, doing business as J.M. Fields Enterprises. We have received an offer to purchase on this city-county-owned property. The offer, as I said, is Ms. Janice Johnson. The offer is $1,620 even. The bid deposit is $81. The tax value is $3,240. The offer is at least 50% of the tax value of the property, and the bid deposit of 5% has been received in the form of a personal check. And I would just ask at this time that you either accept or reject the offer on 900 North Virginia Street.
Move to accept.
Second.
I was going to ask for the motion, but is there any discussion? I have a question. Does this fall within our planned development, Mr. Simon?
No, it's,
Okay. All right. Okay, we have a motion made and second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor of accepting the bid, please signify by raising your hand. Okay, motion's passed.
Okay. My third item is accept or reject the initial bid and authorize finance to advertise for upset bids for 901 North Virginia Street to Janice Johnson, doing business as J.M. Fields Enterprises. Staff has received an offer to purchase this city-county-owned property. The offer is $1,500 even. The bid deposit is $75. The tax value is $3,000. The offer is at least 50% of the tax value of the property. The bid deposit of 5% has been received in the form of a personal check. And at this time, I just asked for you either to accept or reject the offer on 901 North Virginia Street.
Before I make the, I'll ask for the motion, let me just clarify something. This is a county city-owned property, both those, right?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Has this been before the county?
No, so the offer was given to us, and then once we go through upset bid process, and if there are any upset bids, the council will have to approve it. But if there are none and it's deemed approved, then I will give it to the attorney at the county to process with the commissioners.
Okay, thank you
Yes,
for
sir.
clarification.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we have a offer to purchase the property at 900 North Virginia Street. The bid is presented. Is there a motion to accept the bid?
Motion is accepted.
This,
Second.
Mayor, 901, you just said
901,
900.
I'm sorry,
We've already done 900, so just
901.
clear, 901. Thank you.
North Virginia Street. We have a motion made. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor of accepting the bid as presented for 901 North Virginia Street, please signify by raising your hand. Motion carried.
Okay. And then my last item for the evening is an operating budget amendment for fiscal year '23. As part of the fiscal '23 budget ordinance, the city includes a provision to allow for unfulfilled purchase orders to be carried over and appropriated in the new fiscal year. The standard procedure that we follow is that it should be over 5,000. So the list that you have presented in your packet tonight reflects that. We do have a few exceptions depending on what the circumstances are. I've also provided the project funds, but they're provided for memorandum only because project fund POs roll over automatically. We follow the local government commission's recommended process, which is called the reserve for encumbrance methods, and so that's how we've presented it tonight. So what happens is this becomes an appropriation of your fund balance. In the general fund, the rollover total is $1,183,000. Stormwater fund is $62,900. The utility fund is $514,000. The downtown municipal service district fund is $20,600. And the total for all of your operating funds, which is what you're approving tonight, is $1,781,806.44. The projects which were provided just as memorandum for you were $209,508.14. The total is $4,991,314.58, and if you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them. But we provided a list of the detailed vendors as well as description of what the services were for.
Does everybody have a copy of the expenditures and funding that she spoke to?
And quite a few of these, I will say, they are for equipment purchases, which were funded with debt proceeds. And we ran into a lot of challenges trying to order equipment this year with supply chain issues. It's just been a terrible problem. So that's really the reason we have such a large PO rollover in our operating funds, is the majority of that is for equipment purchases.
Any questions? You need approval for that?
No, that'll be in your 7 o'clock meeting packet. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, next item is the request authorization to purchase of Vector. Piece of equipment of some description.
Evening, Mayor, Council. Hope everyone's doing well. I have item J, as the Mayor said, request authorization to purchase a Vector 2100i jet vac. The jet vac was approved in the FY23 budget to purchase in our budget for $480,000. Due to the continuing supply chain issues, acquiring any new equipment continues to be very challenging, with build times averaging 12 to 24 months. We were able to locate one provider, Joe Johnson Equipment, with the resources on hand to complete the jet vac build and deliver it, hopefully, within 6 months for $488,244. The quote and award are through Sourcewell, so it's a government purchasing cooperative, therefore no formal bid process is required. The difference in cost of $8,244 will be funded with operational funds already approved in the FY23 budget. precluding the need for a formal utility fund budget amendment. We've submitted a letter of intent for purchase to hold the jet vac for 30 days pending city council final approval. Recommendation is by motion approve the purchase of the jet vac from Joe Johnson Equipment in Monroe, North Carolina for $488,244.70.
Let me, I've seen your jet vac around town quite a bit in the
Yes,
last 2
sir.
days, and I assume it's operable.
We have jet vac in the stormwater division as well as 2 in the distribution collections. One you've probably seen is working on the GIS mapping. Probably the stormwater's been out quite a bit trying to stay ahead of the contractor, cleaning out catch basins and stuff. This one's for the distributions and collections division. We, this past year, we did a reorg, and now we have 2 fully operational jet vac crews. We only had 2 jet vacs. One's a 2010 model, the other one's I think a 2016 or 17. It's newer, it's still 5 or 6 years old. But since we now have 2 full-time crews that are operating daily, the one that was a backup previously, when we only had 1 crew, we had a backup. We had an operational one that was in service every day, and we had a backup and one went in for maintenance. Well, the backup became full-time, and it's been going back and forth to the shop. It's just not, it's what, 12 years old? They're designed to last about 10 to 12 years. So now we want to purchase a new one for the crew, the second crew. The old one we still are going to keep as a backup for those 2, so when one of those goes into the shop, we'll have a backup ready.
And while you're here, you're not scheduled to come back tonight. Just for, give us an update on the trash collection equipment. I know we've got a couple back trailers recently, right?
Oh, the trash. Oh, yes, we did. We had the road haul trailers. They're fully operational. In fact, we started hauling recycles back to Knightdale this week. We had to get them in. The contractor we got them from had to come down and make some modifications on the hydraulics, so it delayed us a few weeks. But we just received them in the last month or so, and they were actually up and operational this week. We're starting to road haul recycled goods. And
Are we back at a regular schedule now?
for refuse and recycle was always, now they've always been on a regular cycle as far as pickup. It's just we couldn't effectively transport it to the recycle center, the MRF, or to the landfill because we only had one or 2 trailers and we were running refuse only.
Yeah.
So we weren't really running recycles like we hoped to. But we're back to
on
running.
regular schedule.
We are, this week's the first full week that we're back. But picking up has never been a problem. We've always collected it the day it was due to be collected. We just had to divert some of it to the landfill.
We were behind on leaf and limb, and what, you're 3 days behind on leaf and limb now, or what's the latest?
The leaves are on schedule. They've been on schedule for about 2 weeks.
Well, that's what I was referring to because I don't think we've always been on schedule.
Well, recycle, we kept saying recycle, maybe I misunderstood you. It's leaf and limb, right.
Yeah.
Now, the limbs are about, we have 2 trucks down now. I think we got 1 back today, so we should have 2 crews out running tomorrow. Limbs are about 2. I think he said he was on Thursday last week. He's hoping to catch up by tomorrow or Wednesday. We should be hopefully caught up by the end of the week, hopefully. Don't overextend myself
I
there.
apologize for getting off the subject here, but I wanted to give an update of the status of the equipment and so forth.
Yeah, we have crews back. We're manning. We just had a gentleman that previously left, and I just spoke with him today. He's coming back to be an operator, so it's helping. It's looking better. We'll just play it day by day.
Any questions on the jet vac?
Thank you.
Okay, now, planning is back for the new court.
Just wanted to echo Mayor and councilmen and women, my thanks to Maggie and her presentation tonight. It was a good job. Just wanted to let you know, tonight in the agenda in front of you, let's see if we can get properties back up. IT's working towards that. I'll just follow where we left off. So again,
Is this it?
no, sir, we're going to be going to the actual properties that we are looking at acquiring. Let's see.
The agenda itself. The agenda itself.
Yes, the agenda itself.
The agenda itself.
Yes.
The agenda packet. The agenda packet just got the properties listed that's in the rebuild program.
Kenny, where would you have put that? Was it on that PowerPoint?
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay.
While we're going through that, just kind of highlight the agenda memo. So basically, Encore has negotiated the buyout of two properties identified as 707 West Chestnut Street and 306 South Alabama Avenue, and is now requesting that the city accept ownership of the identified properties in accordance with the conditions outlined in the strategic buyout program. So, as you see, the owner of 707 West Chestnut Street, looking at just under 0.17 acres in the R6 zoning district and 100-year floodplain. The other property, again, 306 South Alabama, at 0.24 acres in the R6 and 100-year floodplain. Staff is going to recommend that we accept the properties identified above and take all necessary measures to achieve compliance with the conditions outlined in the program. In conjunction with this, we also are going to be asking that you approve the resolution of acceptance of the properties targeted by the Rebuild NC Buyout Program. Mayor, if you'll see on the second page of the agenda memo, if you feel so
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
And I'm kind of, are you saying that the owners of this property has agreed to the buyout? The owners?
Yes, ma'am. They have signed conditional offers to accept. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And so, Mayor, again, the resolution you have in front of you, of course, it's at your pleasure if you'd like to read that, or I don't know that it requires reading. Does not require it to be read, but that is what we're going to be asking, that accepting the buyout of these two properties from Encore, as well as the resolution in your packet. If you have any other questions, let me know. I'll be glad to address, or Maggie's here to address them as well.
Any questions here? This is really about the city assuming responsibility for these properties.
That is correct.
I don't have any questions.
Anyone have any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
And now we have item I, around understanding the Wayne County for records management system.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Evening, sir.
I have item I, the memorandum of understanding with the Wayne County Records Management System and the computer-aided dispatch software cost and support. City of Goldsboro and the Wayne County had an active MOU in RMS and CAD that has expired. This MOU was established to outline the financial and support roles for each entity as it relates to public safety software. North Carolina General Statute authorizes one or more units of local government to enter into interlocal agreements. This MOU defines the interlocal agreement to outline responsibilities for payment, maintenance, administration, support, implementation, and the use of the Central Square RMS and CAD software. The city is responsible for 25% of the overall implementation cost and 25% of the annual maintenance. Any modules purchased solely for the city of Goldsboro are paid for by the city. This MOU also defines the cost of the city of Goldsboro and the roles of each entity's staff and the support the city will receive from the county. It is recommended that the council adopt the attached resolution authorizing the city manager to sign the MOU with the Wayne County for RMS and CAD software. And I do know the contract is in your packet. Any questions for me?
Any questions?
All right.
Yes, I do. Okay. Next item is departmental monthly reports. You should have received the reports submitted by the departments. Anyone have any questions on those? Comments?
Mayor, I don't have any question on those, but I'm still concerned about 1009 Seaboard Street. I'd like to know what's happening with that. We've really been working very hard. The constituents in my district, which is Seaboard, are very concerned about that house and what's happening to it, and it's getting worse, and snakes are very prevalent. I know the last time we talked, you said that you had contacted the owner. Could you give me an update on what's going on with that?
I'll have to get back to you on that, ma'am.
Anybody?
Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions? Any other business to cover in the work session? If not, I'll recess the meeting till 7 o'clock.
Two. You gonna do your closed session? You gonna do your closed session?
Okay. Okay, it's still 7 o'clock on Monday, August 15th, 2022, and the Goldsboro City Council regular meeting is called to order. At this time, I'm going to ask Assistant Pastor Trevor Jackson at the Deeper Life Church Ministries to come forward and give us our invitation. And it'll be followed by a pledge. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, sir. Good evening, prestigious councilman and mayor. Truly is a privilege to be here in representation of Pastor Aaron McNair, our bishop. As a bishop, you know, sometimes things occur. About 5:57, he got a call, and being the chief ministry officer, I'm here in representation. We send our love. He sends his blessings. Let us pray. Father, we thank you right now, God. Father, we thank you for these leaders, for these body of people that make things go. Father, we ask you right now to continue to bless them as they open up their minds, as they work together, God. Father, your word says, oh, how good and how pleasant it is for brethren to dwell together in unity. And God, as we come together in unity, God, help us to create an atmosphere that is conducive, that the city of Goldsboro, that the greater community of Goldsboro will thrive, that the things and the ideals that this council and the mayor and those that make it do what it is supposed to do will prosper and excel. Now, God, continue to bless them as they handle the business of this here city and the things that need to be done. And God, we say, you arise and let the enemies be scattered. Continue to bless them, keep them, and sustain them as they do this work for the goodness of the glory of you. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, sir. You want me to pledge allegiance? Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please take a seat. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Ham,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Polak,
Present.
Councilwoman Jones,
Here.
Councilman Broadway,
Here.
Councilwoman Matthews,
Present.
Councilman Gaylor,
Present.
Councilman Batts.
Here.
Okay, we're all here. And the next item on the agenda is approval of minutes. Councilmember Batts has not been here before to participate in the minutes. So, Mr. Lawrence, do we need to recuse him, or he just not vote?
No, sir. I mean, he technically, once he's sworn in, he can vote on any matter that comes before the council, whether he was here when it was presented and brought up or not.
Okay.
Okay. So he you know, can decide to vote against it because he says, I've not been here to know, but he's obviously has the opportunity to vote.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. There's a motion to approve the minutes of the special meeting of July 25th, 2022, and the minutes of the work session and the regular meeting of August 1st, 2022. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve the special meeting minutes of July 25th, 2022, as well as the minutes for work session and regular meeting of August 1st, 2022.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor of the approving the minutes, please show by raising your hand. You got it?
All opposed?
All opposed? Okay, the minutes are approved. We have presentations by the city manager, employee performance awards. Sir?
Yes, sir. My pleasure to do the fourth quarter fiscal year 22 employee performance awards, and I'll start with the employee of the quarter. Has been awarded to Casey Morris for outstanding achievement. Casey operates the water reclamation facility. Recently, Seymour Johnson Air Force Base accidentally spilled firefighting foam into our sewer system, which could have been a huge problem, but Casey drew on all of her training and applied defoamer to the spill. She was able to divert the spill into Pond 1 at the water reclamation facility, preventing any upsets to the tender biological system. Casey often volunteers to cover shifts when we are shorthanded, particularly in light of recent staff turnovers. Casey also demonstrates an extraordinary ability to teach new employees. She is incredibly patient and instills to the new staff to leave the plant in better shape than at the beginning of their shift. Casey recently compiled a list of equipment, parts, and part numbers from the water reclamation facility, wetland spray field, and lift station into CityWorks. She stayed focused on this rather large task and handled it in a detailed and orderly fashion. Casey is integral to the functioning of the water reclamation facility. She exudes professionalism, integrity, and customer focus. Casey is an outstanding employee, always setting the bar higher for herself and others. Casey's work ethic and accomplishments reflect well on herself and the city of Goldsboro. So I'd like to give her this check and presentation. If I can get her and her supervisor to come up. Well done. Take a picture here. All right, we'll let Bert say something here, and then the floor is yours.
One thing I'd like to know about Casey here, she's been with the city, what, 10 years? 10 years, and she's been with me as a superintendent, and then as I progressed into the public utility director's position. During that time, she was one of my key focused staff that was helping me along as the way. Running 3 facilities and being in charge of one at the same time as the ORC is a pretty tough task. With Casey's help, it made it that much easier. Describing what that said on there is true. She is very, very professional. She has customer focus, and she's very loyal to the city of Goldsboro. She is a great asset, and I wish her the best. She deserves this a lot. This is actually giving me goosebumps because she is one of the go-getters in public utilities. So thank you very much.
Do you have anything to say?
Thank you, Mr. Burke. I love working for the city, and I've always said from day one, I want to make it my career job, so.
Excellent. Thank you. The supervisor of the quarter has been awarded to Demetrius Cogdell for outstanding achievement. Demetrius Cogdell is the Solid Waste Division's Commercial Operations Section Supervisor. Demetrius is responsible for overseeing all commercial refuse collection operations and managing the city's transfer station operations. He has always strived to do his best, and when the Refuse and Recycle Section Supervisor resigned in December 2021, Demetrius readily stepped up and took on the additional role and responsibilities of supervising all refuse and recycle operations and staff. Demetrius is one of the most dependable and reliable supervisors in the Public Works Department. Even while overseeing and supervising 2 separate sections with the Solid Waste Division, he still regularly operates equipment to service both residential and commercial customers. Demetrius's work ethic, steadfast dedication, and determination have enabled him to work through and resolve significant personnel and equipment shortages and ensure all routes are completed on schedule. On May 17, 2022, a customer called praising Demetrius for his outstanding customer service because he returned to collect her garbage cans when her neighbors were blocking the cans when he first came by. Demetrius is an outstanding employee, always setting the bar higher for himself and others. Goldsboro is a better place because of employees like Demetrius that are passionate about their work and want to serve our citizens in the way they deserve to be served. Demetrius's work ethic and accomplishments reflect well on himself and the city of Goldsboro. Thank you, Demetrius. Just come on up, Rick, if you would. Join us for the picture here. Let Rick say a few words about your person and your chance.
I'll take all night. I'm telling you, if anybody deserves this, it's Demetrius. He's a perfect example that you can't keep a good man down, no matter what I throw at him or what life throws at him in general. This man just keeps bouncing back better and better. He keeps, like you said in the write-up, he took over, and he is actually running 2 sections within the Solid Waste Division right now. Has been since December. Been trying to get him some help. It's just hard. It's hard to get good help. So he's been doing dual roles. fighting the battles, one of the toughest battles, because it's so regimented. You have to get Monday's trash Monday, Tuesday's Tuesday. There's no wait till tomorrow like you do with the potholes. And he's done an outstanding job. Like I said, I talk about you all day. I have the utmost respect for him, and he's a great example for others to follow when it comes to getting things done.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Yes, sir. I'd just like to thank the great citizens of the city of Goldsboro, the staff and the council members for giving me this opportunity to receive this award. I'm greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Get a picture.
There you go.
You reckon I'll join you for one?
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much.
Is it?
It's it, sir, public comment period.
Okay, now we're moving to the public comment period. Anyone wishing to come up and speak, do so, and just remind that we have a 3-minute time limit, so anyone wishing to speak, please come forward. Anyone wishing to speak? I see no one coming forward, so I'll close the public comment period, and we'll move over to the consent agenda.
Yes, sir. Consent agenda items C through J are presented for council approval.
Okay, you've heard the presentations. Is there a motion to accept the items on the consent agenda C through J?
Motion to accept items C through J on the consent agenda.
Is there a second? Second. Motion made and second. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Ham?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Polak?
Yes.
Councilwoman Jones?
Yes.
Councilman Broadway?
Yes.
Councilwoman Matthews?
Yes.
Councilman Gaylor?
Yes.
Councilman Batts?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, the consent agenda is approved. We have no items requiring individual action. City manager report.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to give a quick update on COVID. It remains at a high state here in Wayne County. Executive Order 267 was published today, where Governor Cooper lifted this COVID state of emergency, and the mayor has done the same. I'd like to speak basically, very briefly, on a retraction of a sewer moratorium. I received a letter from the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality, Division of Water Resources, on August 10th, stating the water treatment plant, as it was the water reclamation facility, exceeded the 80% threshold of its current treatment capacity and was placed under a moratorium, and then lifted the moratorium in that same letter due to a letter I submitted on July 21st, 2022. Future moratoriums may still be imposed for exceeding 90% of the threshold of the current water reclamation facility treatment capacity. As of right now, considering July in the calendar year 22, the water reclamation facility average daily flow is 57% of its capacity. So the work we've done with I&I and will do in the future, as well as the dry weather, bodes well, but we still have to watch our capacity here going forward. Fall youth sports registration is underway until August 28th. I'd like to talk briefly about a couple of events. We had a great national night out on August 2nd. I'd like to thank all the staff that participated in that, with the GPD, Goldsboro Fire Department, HR, Community Relations and Development, and other staff. Wayne County Sheriff's Office, Seymour Johnson Air Force Base Police, Wayne County Community College, and other civic organizations made it a well-attended and supported event. We also had a Purple Heart Banquet on August 6th. It was always a very nice event to honor our heroes. Thank the people who supported that. There was a tremendous, tremendous support for the Fallen Sheriff Officer ceremony for Sergeant Fishman at Mount Olive Carnegie Arena. It was quite something to behold, and I know everybody supports the Sheriff's Office. Legislative update breakfast was held August 10th at Lane Tree with Representatives Bell and Smith. That was also a well-done event, and appreciate the opportunity to hear them discuss some of the issues at hand. That's all I have, sir.
So we have those ceremonial documents, and go around and ask for comments from the council. Start with Councilmember Batts this time, sir. What we normally do at the end of the session is to go around the horn, so to speak, and offer any comments you might have about any subject you want to talk about.
Just want to say thank you, and look forward to working with everyone. Again, thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Gaylor?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mayor. The last couple of times that I've had comments, it's been necessarily focused on tragedies, on things that have happened in the city. Today, it's a very different tone. I just simply want to congratulate all the students that are going back to school. It's that time of year. The parents, the grandparents that support these children. We're incredibly grateful to you. The teachers that are getting their classrooms ready and are ready to start with lesson plans, we're incredibly grateful to you. The support staff for the schools, we're incredibly grateful to you. The housekeepers for the schools, the construction workers for the schools, the administration for the schools, whether it is a traditional public school, a charter school, a private school, a Christian school, we're grateful to you. It's that time of year. The community college celebrated its convocation today, which was its large all-campus meeting, incredibly well attended. And I know that University of Mount Olive is looking forward to an incredibly successful fall, and just wish everyone a successful academic year ahead. Thank you.
I saw President Pfeiffer's comments to the county board last, I think it was last Tuesday, and she spoke about the numbers of students at the college, and that certainly holds true, as you said, for the other schools as well. So it's very timely for that comment. Councilwoman Matthews?
No comment.
Mr. Paul?
Yeah, I just want to thank all the city employees that have been loyal and continue to service the residents of this great community, as it was shown tonight with the two individuals that received an award. I remember when Mayor Allen was the mayor, they had something called the Gold Star Award, in which I was a recipient of that, and it makes you feel good to be recognized by your community and your colleagues. So I want to thank you for that. I also want the community to keep our city in prayer, and overall just stand against violence, which we've seen. I wish I could echo and what Councilman Gaylor stated about not speaking of any negativity, but the harsh reality is that in my district within the past 2 weeks, there's been some gun violence. So all the prayer warriors out there at home, I want everybody to continue to pray that we can reverse this and move forward. Also, all the students going back to school, those that are already in school, continue to pray for them as well. A lot of these students are freshmen coming out of a pandemic, having to be virtual. And as I can say right now for the students at Goldsboro High School, I'm very pleased with the freshman class and continue to keep them in prayer as they move forward. That's all I have.
Mr. Roy?
I'd like to welcome Mr. Batts to the council. And I just want to speak a minute about supporting our police and sheriff's officers and firemen. And you listen to the news now and you see what happens. It happens right here in North Carolina. And there's an old World War II saying, if you see something, say something. And let's help those guys out. We need to support these guys and protect us all. That's all I have, sir.
Councilwoman Jones?
I'd like to welcome Councilmember Batts. I also would like to take the time to just thank the staff. You guys are the best, and I thank you for all that you do, how you try to make things happen, make sure that we are here and that we have the information that we need to carry on a successful board meeting. I'd also like to ask everyone out there to pray for our children and youth. I know this is an echo, but there are a lot of children and youth that are going through a whole lot. And please pray for them. And be safe in your goings and comings. And I ask for all the churches that you begin to start this week just to pray a little bit more for your children and youth in this community, because they really need it. They need our support, they need our love, they need our prayers, and they need God's covering.
Thank you.
That's
I'll mention a couple of things. One, I want to thank the council for tonight's passage of the nonprofit allocation funding. I know this has been on our books to do for months now, and as Councilman Gaylor talked about earlier, those agencies have been longing for us to take the action that we did tonight. Some may be happy with what they get, others may not feel as happy, but we've tried to do it in an ethical, fair way, and I hope that everyone is satisfied with what took place tonight. Also want to add my welcome again to Councilmember Batts for joining us. Sir, you've come to an organization that is trying to do the best for this city. There's no biases here in terms of who we're doing it for. This is a whole city effort, and we strive to do that, regardless of what it may be perceived. So I welcome you to join us on that. Also want to comment again, as Councilwoman Jones talked about the two recipients of awards tonight for our city employees. They illustrate the dedication and the professionalism that we have here in the city. They come to work every day. They make this city work so that the people can enjoy the services that give them an opportunity to live their day, to go to work, to send their kids to school, et cetera, et cetera. It's those people like yourselves and the other 480 plus that work for the city that we should never forget, and be thankful that we have this level of professionalism and dedication that we have here in Goldsboro, and I thank you for that. And finally, I spent a lot of my military career in the airborne, and not many people know this, but tomorrow is National Airborne Day, to pay honor to those airborne soldiers, starting back in World War II, all the way through current times now. And it was made a national holiday, or at least not a holiday, but a national day of recognition in 2002 by President Bush. And again, something that those of us who are former airborne or present airborne are proud to be a part of. So that being said, I have no other comments except to say that I need a motion to go into closed session.
Potential litigation. Yes,
For potential litigation.
Motion to go into closed session, potential litigation.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been made and second. All in favor, raise your hand. All opposed? Okay, we're in closed session, ladies and gentlemen.
You're back?
Okay, we're back in open session. Is there any other business to discuss tonight? If not, meeting adjourned.